All righty.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jason Moss. I'm the marketing manager of Allied Communications, and welcome to Allied's 10-Minute Talks. As always, I'm here with Brian Doyle and John Reese.
Good
And as you
morning.
can see,
Hey,
we also
guys.
have a special guest today. Stefania Volto, our COO, is joining us today.
Morning, guys.
Thanks for joining
Morning,
us,
everyone.
Stefania. So for today's 10-minute talk, we're going to discuss returning to the classroom, kind of with a focus on the virtual experience. I know that we've all been seeing about it, and we've all kind of even joined into some of them, some conferences and stuff. But as far as the back to school thing, Brian, you were telling us a little bit about your Bitmoji experience.
Yeah. So Bitmojis are a big part of this. So I'm in a unique spot. I've got teachers and kids in my house, and I got them at all levels of the scholastic spectrum. My wife is a grammar school teacher. My daughter is a sophomore in high school, and my oldest daughter just went into university for the first year. And each one of those came with new virtual experiences that are going on. So, and the reason we bring this up is there's so much technology that's being asked for in the educational space today that didn't exist a year ago, or at least wasn't considered to be front line, right? And that's really what's going on. So when you talk a little bit about Bitmojis, Jason, one of the cool experiences around my house, and I say that a little tongue in cheek, was my wife had to build a virtual classroom for her students. She's responsible for 28 kids that elected not to come back in the hybrid format to their school. And in doing that, what they've been required, and actually all teachers are doing this, even the ones that do have physical classes, is creating a virtual classroom. In that virtual classroom, personalizing it so it reflects the teacher and the class they're teaching. And then they're creating Bitmojis that, basically show what's going on. So I walked into my wife's office as she was getting ready, or, our office now says she was getting things ready for this. And I'm, as she's telling me how stressed out she is, I'm looking at her playing with cartoons, so to speak. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And she's like, no, I have to do this. I have to create a Bitmoji myself, which of course took her about an hour and a half on its own. And then you put my personality into it. So I'm looking at her classroom, and literally she's standing there teaching, holding a cup of coffee. And, so really trying to put in that personalized twist. But what I thought was pretty cool there is, as, she shared with me a couple of her, partners in fourth grade classes as well, they were all able to put a little personalization and style. So when these kids come in, they can start building a bond that wouldn't happen otherwise, in this distance learning format. Last year, they at least had the advantage when everybody went home of building some bonds and relationships in person first. So then it just became remote teaching. But now you've got new kids coming in front of new teachers, and you've got to build this personal connection somehow. And while they do video calls like this, it could be 30 kids on a screen. So everybody's got a pretty small box there. So that's one aspect of it. When I look at, my daughter in high school there, it's a little bit more about, hey, how do we move through the motions? And there, these kids have to be on a schedule. So all of a sudden, calendaring really becomes real important to these high schoolers. And again, all this is happening in Google Schools because they have to know when it's time to switch classes. They have to know what Zoom or, what Google Room they need to go into to get this done. So I'm watching my daughter run an IBM out there on the dining room table now just to do her classwork. And then I'll kind of close with the college experience is interesting. My daughter goes to a school in Rhode Island that elected to basically only bring freshmen in this year. They wanted to make sure that they brought an on-campus experience to the freshman class, those kids that, really don't have a connection yet with the university. And then they sent all the sophomores on up, either homeschool, remote learning, or campus learning. And there it's interesting because even though they're on campus, there are certain classes that they're having them do remotely. So these kids are, kind of in this hybrid model where they've got to go to class, then hoof it back to their dorm room so they can jump online and grab a class, and then hoof it back out into the to another class as well. But they're using a variety of different tools because it's almost teacher preference led, as opposed to, in the grammar schools where it's a lot of Google Workspace. But what you're really seeing is teachers collaborating in a new style. You're seeing students collaborating in a new style, and you're seeing that education is being delivered in the full format. Where if you reflect back on when we first went into COVID, they really struggled with that for end of the year, and most of the schools went to almost even a pass-fail format. Really wasn't hitting the kids too hard from a grading perspective. So that's That's been interesting to see. We talk about work from home a lot, but learning from home is a totally different ball game.
And this isn't new at all. I mean, I remember, you know, in the past taking certifications. I entered rooms like, but it was more like a Sims world kind of thing. You'd walk to your like classroom, you walk to your computer to work on whatever kind of um, solution that we're working on and learning today to kind of like get in that little sandbox environment. And you can talk you walk up to the teacher, hey teacher, I have a question, yada yada yada. You can chat, you could talk to them. But it's pretty crazy what we've come to. I mean, it's always been around, but now it's just become more advanced. And I mean, everyone's used to those Bitmojis on their phones these days. Sending them all like just personalization. But it's definitely gotten really cool.
Yeah,
certainly helps keep the kids and even us a little bit more involved. I've been to some virtual events where you're literally, you're virtually walking around, walking into rooms, and they're set up how they would, if you were actually live in person there, and you can engage with other people at the event, which, it's pretty cool because obviously we can't do some of these things in person. So it's nice to, have a little personal feel to some of these things. Even something as simple as those backdrops on our Zoom meetings, I had never used before all of this. And got to say, April, May timeframe, the beach backdrop was nice.
Yeah, gotta love it. And kind of taking it a step further, speaking of, the personalization of an engagement at these events, I came across something that I thought was really cool, and I'd love to see how it would develop. But I'm a big video gamer, right? And so I don't know if you guys have heard of those people listening out there, but there's something called Oculus Rift that's usually kind of like a VR experience. It's primarily used for gaming. And what I'm seeing is that they're giving this technology to these keynote speakers, and what they're doing is they come with these motion capture, balls, I guess, if you will, and you can kind of attach them to yourself and put on the virtual headset, and they're able to not only kind of give an animated version of themselves to almost their exact likeness, but from home, everything is captured, from hand motions to walking around to their personality. And it's really interesting to think that, this is kind of the future of these events during this time, is that it's interesting to think how this technology will develop. I mean, it's kind of on the pricey side, but I saw that they're developing some more affordable options, and they're going to be giving these to these people. And who knows, what the virtual experience will be like one day. I mean, that's the closest you can get to being in real life. So the motion capture stuff is very interesting when you think about it, because, this is kind of here to stay, I think. Of course, people will go back in person, but, you're saving on traveling. And these keynote speakers that get $30,000 to $50,000 for an appearance, people that are putting on these events probably have a little more bargaining power as far as being able to afford some bigger names. So I'm pretty interested to see how this is going to all play out.
Yeah, it's, the virtual conference environment has become its own business now, right? Because let's face it, the events business, just like hospitality and entertainment, have really been impacted by COVID. And I've been in some virtual events where it's pretty wild. You go into a lobby, they simulate it to look like a lobby in a hotel, if you will, and you've got your avatar that you go in with, and then you literally go into different exhibit halls, these rooms right within this experience. But it is pretty cool, when you go to vendor booth, each vendor's got a different looking booth, and they've customized it to really reflect what they sell, and the logos are into it. And then they've got a whole menu in these virtual conference rooms where you could choose how you want to engage there. You can start a chat immediately to get some information. You could download a brochure or one of the sales slicks. No pens, but yeah. It really takes on the experience. And I think even for, now I'll put on my vendor hat for a minute. It's really cool because some people are a little intimidated by the whole conference thing when they go there. They might not come to you in the table in a traditional format, but now they're willing to come to you in a virtual reality format. And I've seen within these things, these platforms are so expansive that they actually have, all right, now it's time to go into the pub and go to happy hour, and it literally will be a chat room of people that are virtually attending that event, just like you would be in the after hours bar at the conference center, just chatting about everything in life, right? Not necessarily just about the conference, but hey man, I do this. Anybody having this problem too? And you see it really becomes this virtual temporary community tied to this individual